Hey everybody, this is Scott McDonald and his sidekick, Mike Green. Say hi to Mike.
Hey, hi, Mike.
Yeah, whatever. He's trying to hog the camera. Now, I want you to welcome you to the new year of 2020. I hope you can see clearly to the end, if you know what I'm saying, you know.
Yeah.
You see what I did there? That was actually...
I did.
Whatever.
I did.
Anyway, today we're actually going to talk about a rather weighty demographic trend that is out there in the discussion lanes for demographers. And do our competitors ever talk about this? No, they do not, because they're not real analysts. They're usually realtors, consultants,
right.
And I mean, they're probably not bad. They love their pets and they whatever. But the thing is, I just want you to know that this is kind of a cutting edge topic. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, Mike.
Do it.
And I love that manly. Do it.
I'm excited.
Only a man who hunts in the wilderness really appreciate. By the way, is deer season completely over? Or
It is for me. It is for me. We got 2 deer in the freezer, and I've been enjoying them immensely.
Just looking at those tongues lolling out of the heads, that's what I love. Okay, sorry about that, everybody. Let's go on and talk about the demographic civil war. And that's going to surprise you right now, but we are right now on the verge of a civil war in the United States, and it's all centered around demographics. And if you're trying to figure out the perfect place to put a practice, you better listen up to this, because the things that we're seeing are going to affect your future success. Even if you're in a location that appears to be just fine and stable, it gets to be a little bit scary. So let me go on. Things are already heating up right now in January for what's happening in the future. And so, guys, like I said, things are happening, and I want to go through these with you as quickly and as succinctly as we possibly can. Now, does everybody understand that the federal government puts out the census forms, right? You probably know that there's a reason it's in the Constitution of the United States why we do a census in the United States every 10 years. It's really for one purpose, and that is to decide upon who gets representation in the House of Representatives. The Senate, as you know, 2 senators from every state, but for the House of Representatives, they have decided that they're going to limit the number of congressmen. And because of that, they have to reapportion who gets whom as the population increases or reduces. Now that is interesting, but the Constitution doesn't necessarily say how many citizens there are, just residents. Now, Donald Trump has said, I want the question, are you an American citizen? They are afraid, the Democrats, that if they do that, a lot of people are going to go, well, I'm not going to write those forms out, forget it. And the Republicans are going, look, the only way to apportion voters is to say who's eligible to vote. So that's the back and the forth of it. The citizenship question may or may not be resolved. I have no idea. I just know that it's a hot issue. There have been other hot issues, and one of those is to take a non-nose counting way that the census is going to decide how many people there are. Some people want to use an algorithm and say, based upon what generally we're seeing, here's generally the number, but Constitution calls for a nose count or a head count, and that's another controversy. See, you have a lot of homeless people sleeping in the street. Do you count them? Well, they're not going to raise their hand and say, I'm here. And there are people who live under the radar in the United States. There's a significant number of alien people who come to live here. They're not citizens, and they are working under the table. Nobody knows how much, nobody knows how many, but it's a very hot issue. Now, the implications could not be greater. Obviously, the number of congressmen is going to matter, but so does the distribution of federal dollars matter. Yeah, the states have money that they get from the federal government, but there's also money that goes directly from the feds to individual people, as well as small institutions, towns, whatever. And everybody is fighting for money. And that is really the source for it. But the other reason that its implication is significant is people are fighting for power. There has never been a bunch of people who are more prone to look at the statistics of the census as there are right now. And so you're going to see a lot of news stories coming out very, very soon. Now, everybody understands about gerrymandered districts. And what that is where a state will decide how many voting districts they have within their boundaries. Now, gerrymandering is a hot issue because they always go to the courts and say, hey, courts, you want to settle this issue for us. Is this legitimate that they drew the boundaries the way they did? And in some of those places with large numbers of minorities, they look like amoebas. They're very odd shapes and very unnatural, and that's not really what the founders wanted. Nevertheless, that's the way it exists. Here's the challenge. The federal government, Donald Trump's administration, has been naming judges in far greater numbers. Within 3 years, Donald Trump has named more judges, and they're going to have a say over the gerrymandered districts. He did more in 3 years than Barack Obama did in 8. And there was always the expectation that Hillary Clinton was going to win. And with that idea, they thought, oh, well, we'll kind of get around to naming those judges. And they didn't. There was also the issue in the Senate. There was a filibuster that they could put on any judge they didn't like. Well, Harry Reid took care of that, and it didn't happen. So a lot of turmoil is happening right now because judges are going to decide whether or not a gerrymandered district is appropriate or not. And you're going to see some blood on the streets. Also, a couple of other things that are happening, and I hope you're enjoying this discussion because it will affect the doctors that we work with. Birth rates, voter rolls, and healthcare subsidies are still hot issues. Now, birth rates, this makes everybody very upset because the states that are having the highest birth rates tend to be far more conservative. And what it means, before, we'd always been able to depend upon immigrants who'd come into the United States and have very large numbers of children. And in this way, the parties, the Republicans, the Democrats, could kind of say, well, it's sort of even out. But right now, that's not happening. That's because statistics are showing that the aliens, people who come into the United States, whether they're legal or not, are not having children at the same rate that they used to. And that is making a lot of people really nervous about what happens when we start counting those baby noses, and it's going to impact the next 10 years. The voter rolls are also being cleaned out like they haven't been before. There was a time in which state governments would get these rolls that we knew were suspect because people would appear on multiple rolls in different counties and districts, different states. And the federal government's come in and said, you're going to clean those rolls up. Some have begun to do it. There is screaming and shouting and cries. Now, the health care subsidies that have been going out with Obamacare were based upon the census and how much money went to any given district or hospital or regional facility has really changed things. I'll tell you another demographic change, everybody, I want you to hear, and that is there's salt in the wounds. Now you're going, what's salt? The salt stands for state and local taxes. Now what happened is large high tax states used to allow, or the federal government allowed them, to write off state and local taxes. Well, that's not bad if you're New York or New Jersey or California. It was a way for the kind of those very liberal states, high tax states, to subsidize their high tax rolls until we had a big change in which they said, no, the lower tax states, regardless of their political persuasion, are not going to subsidize the high tax states. Well, Florida kind of beat a lot of people to the punch because they have no state income tax. Other states that don't, including Nevada and Texas, Utah, Colorado even, they're lowering their taxes, the state and local taxes, because of one thing that nobody seems to talk about. People are moving out of the states that they've been in because the taxes are too high. And so you wonder, why in the world is Florida growing so fast? It's because of everybody from New York and New Jersey that is heading down there. It's not the weather, although it's just lovely. They're moving because of the state and local tax exemption has been taken away. And we haven't seen the impact in the census yet of what happens when you lose in Illinois tens of thousands of people who are moving out every year. We don't know what's going to happen there. And I should say the same thing's true in New York, but California, we have not really seen what's going to happen yet. Now, there's also a transient population, or a transience in the population because of this. A lot of people are moving. They're moving under the radar. Now, one of the reasons is state and local taxes, but the other thing is the cost of living in Washington state has become crazy high. You can't buy a house in Seattle. California's made it very difficult. Other states, on the other hand, and I'm going to put Arizona in this category, they're saying, come on down, we'll take you. It's not cold here. We got reasonable taxes, and you can buy a house or a condominium at a reasonable price. Very difficult in other states. So the disparity between the cost of living in one state is having an effect that we're going to see in this Census Bureau year. We're going to see what happens. There's also illegal immigrants in sanctuary cities and states that have sprung up. Now, you may say illegal aliens are going to move wherever they want, where there's work. But what's happened is these policies have attracted illegal aliens and unregistered, undocumented, well, I don't know if you are sensitive about it, but there are a lot of people who've struggled a long time, particularly in Asia, who've wanted to come to the United States legally, be able to vote, be able to take their assets and to bank on them here. So that's having an effect on the distribution of people who were foreign born. I think we may see this spring a resurgence of this, and of particular importance is China. China has a great goal. People in China want to send their children and their money to the United States. They're really afraid of a devaluation that will be government sponsored, and it is having an effect on what they're trying to do with their investments. Now, last little thing I ought to tell you, some states have passed laws that make it so that all you have to do to get a driver's license is nothing. Literally, they will send you an application, everything's filled out, they want you to have a driver's license. And they're saying it's public safety. I get that, but it's also an identification. And some states are not recognizing the driver's licenses in other states. Now, there's this reciprocity thing that's supposed to exist, particularly in driver's licenses. And it's having an effect, and it may have a bigger effect than anybody recognizes, that some states are going to lose their ability to issue a government document, driver's license, and it's going to make things tough. Now, the other thing you ought to know is ballots. Many times they're sending out absentee ballots to anybody without asking, without even being registered. So you get a driver's license, and all of a sudden now you're registered to vote. That's making some states, particularly the conservative states, a little upset that this is throwing off the election. Now, trends for states, I want you to understand. First of all, a lot of people are moving from New York, and I'm going to say New England, down to Florida. And that means the South. And I'm going to say Florida because of its taxes, but also Alabama and Texas are being the recipients of huge numbers from the Northeast. California is also spreading its residents to a lot of states in the West. Nevada, Arizona, Utah, and Colorado are all of a sudden pushing people to come. And they're saying, you want to come? Come, we want you. Now that's making the politics in California, in Florida, and other states a little bit more liberal because so many people have come there and they're using the same voting patterns they've had. Illinois is losing a lot of population to Indiana, Ohio, and Tennessee. Now, what that means is businesses that have been very large in Illinois are kind of going. Now, the implication for Illinois is they don't have the taxes that they used to have. They used to be able to collect from a large number of businesses and residents, and because of the state and local tax thing, Illinois is really beginning to suffer. It doesn't mean that there aren't good places to practice in California, New York, Illinois, and by the way, New Jersey, and even Connecticut. There are good places, but you've got to do more research than you used to do. And as I'll mention in a minute, it's not a matter of looking at the whole state. You have to look at parts of the state. In fact, I'll give you a case study in just a minute. Now, another little thing that I want you to understand that is changing right now, and the census has something to do with it, and that is the licensing boards. You get your license from your state, obviously. So if you graduated from that place, doesn't mean that you get to practice there. You can take the regional boards, the Western regionals or whatever. But it doesn't necessarily mean that those boards are non-political. They are. And they're being used as a big stick to whack political opponents and who they want to have come in. Now, this is where the foreign trained doctors are kind of getting screwed over, but also have an opportunity. There are a lot of foreign trained doctors, particularly from Asia, and some from South America that are coming to the United States, some excellent clinicians. In fact, I think the standard for foreign trained doctors, from my humble opinion and experience, is looking like you get some really good people moving in. That is not a comfortable thing for a lot of doctors who might be in states that they don't have the advantage because there are so many new doctors moving in. What it means is not only is the population shifting, but the number of doctors is shifting from some states to others. And in fact, we're seeing kind of a rush to move to some locations. It is not my purpose to go through those now, and there's too many to take into account, but it's going to have an effect. And with that, our staff certified to do certain things. So RDAs, RDHs, registered medical assistants, nursing staff. The certification by these people is also changing. Now, if you happen to have one of those states that is going to be charging $15 an hour or more for everybody, you're going to be very, very picky about who you hire, and certification is going to matter more than ever. And in some states, we're seeing a real lack of certified people because while the minimum wages are higher than they were, the doctors are being pickier about who has certifications and who can come in, because if that's coming out of their pocket, they want to make sure that their staff is absolutely well prepared to serve. There's also a little bit of a trade-off thing going on that I keep hearing, I haven't seen, but I keep hearing about, in which some state boards are saying, unless you're doing some pro bono work or willing to do a little stint among the poor and the needy and the homeless, we're not going to give you a license, or we're going to make your life kind of a hell. And that, if it turns out to be true, and I could be wrong, I will admit this, if it turns out to be true, there's a lot of doctors who are also going to take that into account and go, I do not want to be in this crappy place for 5 years of my life, not earning what I could in other locations. So they're going to shop the places with the better reimbursement rates and better licensure. That's a thing. Okay. There's also a little hot button issue about English as a first language. There are a lot of doctors who want to come to the United States who do not speak English as a first language. Doctors, I have found something kind of funny in this ethnic trend, that sometimes the people who are pickiest about your language skills are people who speak a foreign language. They want to know that they're getting a doctor who really comes across very well. So doctors who speak English as a second language, let's really consider getting your language skills really up to snuff, and that you look more American. Now, is that bigoted? Absolutely. It sounds terrible, and I'm not trying to hurt anybody. In fact, I want you to be successful. But we can't ignore the fact that there are going to be some doctors who don't have the language skills that they're really going to need to make the money they deserve unless they get those skills up. And I see that as a coming trend. Now, there's another little thing I want you to understand, and I'm really sorry I'm having to hurry so much, but there is a division in the United States between urban, rural, and suburbs, or suburban practices. Now, everybody kind of says, oh, cities are the place to be. But the truth is, the cost of doing business and the cost of living and the cost of staff in urban locations is becoming a serious issue. Serious. And I just want you to be aware that there's a division between these about what their viability. Now, a lot of experts are saying the real strength of the American economy in terms of demographics is just outside the city centers. It is in what they call the near suburbs. Now, I did a podcast on this some time ago, but the near suburbs are the ones that you really want to consider if you're looking for a place to go. And this is manifested by the demand for housing and jobs and transportation accessibility within the cities in America. The rural areas may by default do better than they've done. But there are some rural areas that are not improving their infrastructure, specifically roads and their internet and their utilities, and they're going to suffer. So I'm just saying that's one of those things, if you happen to be in a rural area, they're looking for. There's also an intrastate civil war going on. Now, again, sorry I have to hurry through this, but guys, look, it's important. If you look at two states, Colorado and Virginia, it used to be you would look at a state and say, how hard is it to license? What's the ratio of dentists and physicians to population, and make it a simple calculation. But what we're really seeing is within the states, there are major divisions. Didn't used to be that way. In fact, you went to California because it was California, or you went to Nevada because it's Nevada. But if you look at two examples, Colorado and Virginia, within the state, there are people who are moving into these two states, and they're not alike. And they're tending to have a political and business division. So if you go to Colorado and you look at Colorado Springs, it is a very different city than nearby Denver. Denver is very much more in one political persuasion than the other. It doesn't mean that people don't want to move to Colorado. They do. But what's happening is they're dividing out, and they're having little internecine wars about zoning, public funding, immigration. They're having a big issue on the homeless. And so when you look at that, you got to realize the place you're looking within the state is going to matter more than it ever has. Virginia is a good example. If you look at that area along the Potomac, on the north side, Loudoun County, Fairfax County, they have had so many people make so much money, and they've come into the area to make it. And they're sticking around, and they've brought with them a political point of view that is very different for the rest of the state. You already know that there is more like 95, 96 counties in Virginia. 89 of them have decided they're going to be Second Amendment sanctuary counties. Now, the larger counties in the north said, no, we're going to make you change. And those counties in the southern area going, like heck you are. And so there is just this example, and this is having an effect upon the kinds of people who will move to one particular part of the state versus another. And I ought to say that there's a certain cultural thing with being from the old South versus the new South, and it's making a difference. Now, I'm sorry I didn't mean to take quite so long and have to rush this through, but yeah, you can go back and look at this again. Now, a lot of people are asking, well, how can I use Dr. Demographics and what should I do? So here's what I'm going to suggest. Mike is putting together on our website at drdemographics.com a way to get past webinars and podcasts and articles, and we're going to be selling them for a very low price. We'll introduce that in a future episode. But I'm just going to say, first of all, if you haven't gone back and looked at our website, there's a ton of information there, but it isn't going to be free for very much longer. So please take a look at what we've got. Every week we've done this. We have literally hundreds of webinars and podcasts on specific parts of the country and major trends. So the telephone consult is a very good way to introduce you to answer a specific question on where should I go, what should I do, how do I make it work, and it's all about you. And so you talk to Mike and I, and that's what it's all about. Mike, any thoughts?
You know, I think the only thought is just a little bit of a plug for tomorrow's marketing discussion. Yeah. We're going to, this has been popular on Tuesdays, but we have had some requests for a little bit more marketing information that some practices need. So tomorrow, the same time, noon Eastern, 10 o'clock Mountain, I guess, we're going to be doing this on, so you'll receive an email tonight for that registration if you want to be there live. If not, we'll still do the same protocol where we'll have it up on the website for a little bit, and then it'll be within the training library of the website. So you should be checking out the website. There's nobody that's putting near as much content out there as we are. And like Scott says, we've really covered every topic from A to Z and then some. So check it out.
Thank you, Mike. That's pretty good. Now, by the way, just as a little thought, you know that I happen to be a professor of communications and marketing, and Mike has got so much ground level experience. In fact, one of the things that I absolutely love about Mike Green and his approach to marketing is he's practical. He doesn't do the highfalutin stuff. He's saying what is going to work, what's going to pay off. And he is just as cheap as can be. He's got these large number of copper wires that he's plucked out of Lincoln's beard on the penny.
Oh boy.
That's how tight fist.
Yeah, it's true. It is true.
Yeah, well, what can I say? So anyway, you guys, thank you so much, Mike. Thanks for your contribution. And we look forward to seeing that webinar tomorrow. I hope you'll join us because you're just not going to get this quality content for nothing, forever. All right. Thank you so much. Take care, and we'll talk to y'all soon.